Okay, I'm going to get started this morning by just welcoming all of you guys. Welcome. Nice to see all of you guys. Good morning. Good morning. Nice to see everyone. Welcome back to our retreat. We're going to be starting this morning with some meditation to help you guys to build up your practice of meditation. Then after our meditation, I'm going to be teaching you about meditation, breathing mindfulness meditation, and we're going to help you guys to understand the ins and outs of meditation and how it all connects to your journey to enlightenment and why even we are meditating and what you're accomplishing during the meditation. Then after our break, because we're going to take a mid-morning break, then we're going to come back and I'm going to teach you what is enlightenment so that you'll understand what this mental state is. And then we're going to go into the very first teaching of the Buddha, which is the Four Noble Truths. This is where you can have a real breakthrough to understanding the problem in your mind, the cause of that problem, the elimination of it, and the path forward. This is the real beginning of the path to enlightenment, is the Four Noble Truths. Then we're going to take a break and go on an excursion. If you guys would like to go on the excursion today, it's going to Sangapang Hot Springs. I'm going to take a little poll at the first break and see who would like to go so I can organize the transportation. We're going to work in lunch and dinner into that. And then when we come back from the hot springs, and if you're taking free time to do whatever you'd like to do, you can come back at 6:30 tonight, where I'm going to be teaching what's called the 3 poisons or the 3 unwholesome roots. This is how to transform the mind away from craving, anger, and ignorance, or this unknowing of true reality. This is a high-level way to refer to the pollutions of the mind that the Buddha discovered, and you need to uproot these and eliminate them from the mind in order to get to enlightenment. So those are the things that we're going to be discussing today, and we'll be finishing up at 8:30 this evening. So again, welcome to all of you guys here. Welcome to everyone joining us online as well. If you'd like to join for meditation, we're going to start just like we did yesterday with the chanting, easing into that. Then I'll come in with the guidance. Then there's going to be a period of time where it's just quiet. Then we're going to come out of the meditation with some more chanting. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Bhutang Bhagavanang Abhivateyami Savakato Bhagavata Tammo Dhammang namasami Supatipanno Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Sanghang namami Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso Bhagava Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vicacaranang Sammuno Sakato Rokavitu Anutero Purisa Dhamma Sati Satatawa Manusanang Bhutto Bhagavati. Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect. Just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath. A nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathing gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose, or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. อะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธมหะคะวาโพตังมหะคะวันหังอภิวาเทมิสวากขาโตมหะคะวะตาธัมโมธัมมังนัมสสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหะคะวะโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมหะคะวะอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารณังสัมมุโนสคาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาดัมมาสติสัตตาตาวะมนุสนังโพโตภะคะวะติ Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. All right, good morning again. Welcome to everyone. Nice to see everyone here this morning. It's going to be a great day of spending time learning the teachings of the Buddha, going out and doing some activities, and coming back and learning some more about the teachings of the Buddha and doing some meditation. So welcome to everyone here. Welcome to everyone online as well. This first topic that I'm going to explain and share with you guys is all about breathing mindfulness meditation. This is the primary form of meditation that the Buddha used in order to make his way to enlightenment. There's 4 different meditations that the Buddha taught in order to make his way to enlightenment. And over the course of this retreat, you're going to learn 3 of those 4. There's 2 meditations that are primary for everybody to be able to learn in order to get to enlightenment. That's breathing mindfulness meditation and loving kindness meditation. You would need to know these 2. And by the end of today, you'll understand why you need those 2. The other 2 are specialized meditations that not everyone's going to need, but they're special cases that you might need these. So there's one to help you realize non-self. Everyone's going to need to know how to realize non-self, but not everyone needs the meditation to accomplish it. And then there's a meditation to eliminate sexual cravings. And not everybody needs that particular meditation to eliminate their sexual cravings. But these are the 4 meditations that the Buddha taught in order to make your way to enlightenment. Sometimes in the world, you're going to see all kinds of information about meditation because now, 2,500 years after his death, there's probably hundreds, if not thousands, of meditations that people have invented that are out there in the world. And if you tried to learn all these different meditations, it would spread you out really thin, and you wouldn't be able to penetrate deeply down into these meditations to really master them and understand how to actually do them. So when you understand by the end of today what's actually the problems in the unenlightened mind, you'll see why the Buddha taught these 4 meditations, and then you can really focus on the first 2 to get started, which is what we're doing in this retreat. And now you can get really deep into these meditations and really master them and really perfect them to the point where they're very effective at training your mind. So we're going to start with breathing mindfulness meditation. I'm going to help you understand this. And then as we go in the retreat, I'm going to help you understand loving kindness meditation and then the meditation to realize non-self as well. So just a couple of words from the Buddha on meditation, even though he has lots of different words on meditation. Out of this book series, there's one book that's devoted to breathing mindfulness meditation. It's a consolidated book that consolidates the teachings of the Buddha on meditation, and you can see exactly what he taught about meditation. So that way you're not confused about what he taught, because there's so much misinformation in the world about meditation that depending on where you've been, you might have been exposed to things that aren't the actual teachings of the Buddha related to meditation and other things as well. And if you're doing meditations that aren't actually taught by the Buddha, then it can be taking your mind in the opposite direction of enlightenment. So in order to get to enlightenment, you would like to get as close to what the Buddha did as possible, because he's the discoverer, the declarer, the originator of the path to enlightenment. He's the one who figured this out. So the closer you get to what he actually practiced and what he taught, that's what's going to lead to your enlightenment too. So there's an entire book over there, I think it's volume 7, that is all dedicated to breathing mindfulness meditation, and it's the consolidated teachings out of these 45 large volumes of books. It consolidates his teachings on breathing mindfulness meditation into one book that you can actually read, and you can see exactly what he taught about meditation. But these are just a few of his words on meditation among all the others that he shares. So here he says, "Meditate, monks, do not be complacent, lest you regret it later. This is my instruction to you." So here, what can happen as you're making your way to enlightenment, if you're kind of early in your practice, or maybe not even really practicing much, you can become complacent. And if you become complacent with your meditation practice, it's not going to produce the results that you need. It's kind of like when we were first growing up and we were learning how to brush our teeth and take a shower. Our parents were constantly telling us, like, go brush your teeth, go take a shower. Eventually, though, by the time we got to maybe 10 or 12 years old, we kind of liked that fresh taste in our mouth. We kind of liked feeling fresh to the body, and we saw the benefits in taking a shower and brushing our teeth, and they didn't have to tell us to do it anymore. We just did it by ourselves because we knew how beneficial it was. The same thing is true about meditation. When you first start, sometimes people have challenges to see the benefits in the meditation, and they really need to motivate themselves to do it, and the mind can become complacent. Well, what you would like to do is you'd like to have energy and effort and enthusiasm and dedication and motivation to do your meditation. And as you do, you're going to start seeing the benefits, and then that's going to kind of be the momentum that's going to take you forward in your practice, where now you can do it more readily because you can't imagine going a day without meditating because you've seen so much benefit to the condition of your mind. So this is the Buddha really encouraging you to get out there and make sure that you're meditating. You won't see the Buddha guilt, shaming, or fearing you into anything. You won't see him pushing you or forcing you to do anything. This is the closest thing you're ever going to get to the Buddha saying, yeah, go ahead and go do this practice. This is something that would be helpful for you. Go do this thing. This next one here, he says, a pot without a stand is easy to tip over. A pot without a stand is easy to tip over. The pot is your mind. The stand is your meditation practice. So a meditation practice, a mind without a meditation practice is easy to become discontent. A mind without a meditation practice is easy to become discontent. That's what he's essentially saying. A pot without a stand is easy to tip over. The stand is your meditation practice. And as you're meditating, this will create more and more and more of a wider stand. So as you go week upon week, month after month of meditating, you'll get this wider and wider stand where it's harder and harder to tip over the pot. It's harder and harder for the mind to become discontent. So as you build up your practice, you're going to see that your mind becomes more and more stable, and it's more and more challenging for the mind to become frustrated and irritated or annoyed or sad or angry or stressed or having anxiety and things like this. So a pot without a stand is easy to tip over. Here's another one from the Buddha where he's talking about the goal and the importance of meditation. He says, monks, there is one thing that, when developed and cultivated, leads exclusively to liberation, to freedom from strong feelings, to elimination, to peace, to direct knowledge, experience, to enlightenment, to nibbana. What is that one thing? mindfulness of breathing, or breathing mindfulness meditation. This is that one thing that, when developed and cultivated, leads exclusively to liberation, to freedom from strong feelings, to elimination, to peace, to direct knowledge or experience, to enlightenment, to nibbana. So here what he's saying is there's one goal for this meditation. If you're doing breathing mindfulness meditation, it leads to one thing. There's one goal for it, which is for you to get to enlightenment. That's the sole purpose of this meditation, is to help you get to enlightenment. He's not saying you only need one thing to get to enlightenment. Otherwise, he would have just taught meditation and that's it. We wouldn't have 45 volumes of books. If all you needed to get to enlightenment was meditation, he would have just taught meditation and that's it. He wouldn't have taught anything else. What he's saying here is that this meditation leads to one thing, which is enlightenment, the peace of the enlightened mental state. It's kind of like saying your car, it leads to one thing, which is transportation. That's what it leads to. But you need more than just a car. You need more than just a transportation in your life in order to sustain your life. You need food, clothing, shelter, medical care. You need all these different things. So your car, it leads to one thing, which is transportation. Right? That's essentially what he's saying, is that this meditation, it leads to one thing, which is enlightenment itself, the peace of the enlightened mental state. So these are just some of the words of the Buddha here about meditation, but in volume 7, you're going to see that consolidated version of all of his teachings. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through, helping you to understand how to build up a meditation practice, all the ins and outs of that. And as you guys know, you're welcome to ask any and all questions as we get going. If you guys could use the mics here at the temple, and then for those of you online, you can put your questions into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or in Zoom, you can raise your hand and ask any questions that you like. So just to get some meditation basics established so that you guys understand what I'm talking about here is I'd like to give you a definition of meditation. You may or may not agree with this definition, but at least when I talk about meditation, you'll know what I'm talking about. So that way we have an understanding of what it is that I'm describing. So the way that I describe meditation is that it's a technique to actively train the mind during dedicated, independent, purposeful training sessions to eliminate unwholesome qualities of the mind and or cultivate wholesome qualities of the mind in the positions of seated, lying, standing, and walking. Right? So it's a dedicated, active, purposeful training session where you're eliminating certain unwholesome qualities and you're cultivating certain wholesome qualities in the mind. And you're doing this in the seated, lying, standing, or walking positions. These are the 4 positions that the Buddha taught. This is important to be able to understand because sometimes nowadays someone might say, I'm going to go for a drive and meditate, or I'm going to go walk the dog and meditate, or I'm going to go to the gym and meditate. If someone thought that these things were actually meditation, and when you hear me share with you that I recommend you meditate 2 or 3 times a day, if you went and walked the dog 2 or 3 times a day thinking you're getting to enlightenment, you're not going to be able to get to enlightenment that way, right? So you need to be able to understand what meditation is, that it's this dedicated, purposeful training session. You actually can't meditate all day long. Sometimes people think that all day long in their day, they're actually meditating. You're practicing mindfulness or awareness of mind throughout your day, which you guys are going to learn about tomorrow, but you can't actually meditate all throughout your day. You're going to need to actually understand what meditation is, which is this dedicated, active, purposeful training session. And if you're actually doing meditation in the way that the Buddha taught, you're not going to be able to do it for much longer than about 30 minutes because it's quite detailed and it's quite exhausting for the mind when you're first getting started. Sometimes people meditate for 5, 6, 8, 10, 12 hours. Oftentimes what they're doing is they're just looking at their thoughts. They're kind of playing around with their thoughts. They might be looking at their ideas and their thoughts. This isn't actually what the Buddha taught. You're going to see what the Buddha taught with the meditation. And if you're doing it the way that the Buddha taught, all you need is 30 minutes of meditation. It's kind of like if you go to the gym, you could go to the gym and you could go there and talk on your cell phone. You could watch the TV. You could talk to your friends. You could go in the locker rooms and kind of hang out for a little while. And 3, 4, 5, 6 hours later, you can come out of the gym and having had a certain workout, right? Or you can go to the gym for 30, 45 minutes, bang out your sets of exercise, and then boom, you're off to the next thing and let's do some other stuff today, right? We don't need to sit here and kind of gallivant around the gym. We can just go in, get the work done, and get out. Because there's so much more in life that you need to be able to do and you'll enjoy out of life than just meditation. So it's not feasible for you to meditate 4, 5, 6, 8, 10 hours a day consistently. So you'll see that really all you're going to need is about 30 minutes of meditation per session. And I'll explain to you when we get to that point in time. So exercising, walking the dog, gardening, driving, this isn't meditation. But these things are maybe beneficial for somebody, right? Maybe you would like to do these things. Surely you might do these things and you enjoy these things, and others as well. But it's just important to make sure you don't see it as meditation, because these things are different than meditation. You're going to need a meditation teacher. Only a Buddha would be able to get to enlightenment by themselves without the help of any teachers or any guides. And a Buddha is very rare in the world. The last one that the world's currently aware of existed over 2,500 years ago. So you're going to need a guidance. And if you didn't have guidance, this could really produce a lot of difficulties and struggles. And I'm going to give you an example of this so you understand what I mean. Getting to enlightenment isn't just something that you could figure out on your own. You're going to need the help of teachers and guides. And if you tried to do this on your own, you can run into a lot of difficulties and a lot of troubles. There's one particular student that contacted me several years ago that they weren't studying with me initially, but they were out there watching YouTube videos, reading books, things like this, trying to get to enlightenment on their own, not realizing that they couldn't do that. This individual was a doctor. They were a practicing physician. So they were pretty smart, right? And they got to a point after about 2 years of YouTube videos and books and things like this, where they were sleeping for 23 hours a day. They couldn't work any longer. They were having suicidal thoughts. They were having depression, major depression. Their relationship with their fiance was falling apart, and they couldn't even go to work anymore. And they somehow got in contact with me, and they asked for my help. And as I started to talk to this person and realize what was going on, I started trying to help them online and, helping them through like video calls and stuff like that. But eventually the case was so significant, I invited this person to Thailand, and I said, I can only help you if you come to Thailand. So he ended up deciding to come to Thailand after about 3 or 4 months of helping him online. And then he came here and I helped him for a little bit. And then he went back to his home country. And eventually he did get out of the situation that he was in, and he got back to work. He didn't have suicidal thoughts anymore. He worked himself all out of these kinds of situations through learning and getting guidance from a teacher. But it took him about 4 to 6 years to get to that point. And his relationship with his fiance did fall apart. But this is the challenge. If you're out there not knowing what it is that you're doing, you can kind of work yourself into a corner and not realize that that's what you're doing. I don't suspect that any of you will ever have that issue, because you're gaining the wisdom that you need guidance and you need a teacher. If you're out there meditating and doing the things that you normally do, and maybe once every 6 months, once a year, maybe even in 3 years, 5 years, you reach out to a teacher where you need help, then have somebody that you can reach out to. Whether it's me or if it's somebody else, find somebody that you can have a personal relationship with. And whenever you're having difficulties or struggles, whether it's in your meditation practice or any other part of your life, you have somebody to reach out to and ask for help, because you can't ask a book for help, and you're going to need to get help along the way. And there's going to be certain things that are happening in your meditation practice that you're going to reach out to a teacher and you're going to say, hey, I'm experiencing this. And if what you get back from your teacher is, oh, that's normal, keep going, then you'll have the confidence to know that you're headed in the right direction. Whereas if you don't have that ability to do that, you're not going to be able to get that guidance. So it's really helpful to have a teacher, and you wouldn't be able to get to enlightenment without teachers and guides. And this actually helps you to reduce some of the ego in your mind, because sometimes with the ego, the arrogance, the pridefulness, the boastfulness in the mind, someone might think that, I can do this on my own, and they're out there and they don't even realize that they might be struggling. So by choosing to have a teacher, it's like the mind's ego gets reduced just a little bit, because it's an admission that, hey, I need help here in this life. I need other people to be able to help me. So whether you consider me to be your teacher or not is totally up to you. And I don't need to hear from you every week or every month or every year, but just know that at any point in your journey to enlightenment, if you'd like to reach out for help, you can do that. Just send me a message. You can post in our Facebook group. You can schedule personal guidance with me. You can ask questions in these classes. You're always welcome to get help. And I don't have any expectations of anything from you whatsoever. You're always welcome to get help with me. There's 4 positions that the Buddha taught in order to train the mind. that what you're doing on this path is you are training the mind. You're not training the body. Sometimes people put a lot of emphasis on the body position that you should be in order to actually train. This isn't actually what the Buddha taught. He taught 4 positions, but there's many variations within these positions, and there's not just one fixed position to actually meditate in. You can discover for yourself what is comfortable, what you would like to sit or lie or stand or do walking meditation. There's these 4 different positions that you need in order to be able to meditate. So I'm going to explain to you these different positions and how you might consider to use them. But remember, you're not believing me about anything whatsoever. You are your own independent practitioner, and you've got to figure out for yourself in what situations you would like to use these positions, because they're going to be beneficial for you, but you need to know how to use them and when to use them. And I'm going to share with you how I've used them, but then you've got to figure out for yourself in what situations would you like to use them. So I'm going to share that with you. There's seated, lying, standing, and walking. The seated position is kind of like the primary position that most people actually meditate in. It's a primary position that a lot of people start in. This is either sitting on the floor or sitting in a chair. You might be sitting on a bench or a sofa or a wheelchair. You can really sit however you like, but this tends to be the go-to position for most people. I would say about 80 or 90% of the meditation I've ever done has been in the seated position. So if you're on the floor, you usually have some cushions under your ear. You kind of lightly cross your legs. Some people like to put their legs off the mat, but you could really sit however you like. There's not just one fixed position because everybody's body is a little bit different. And then the Buddha put his right hand over his left with his thumbs together, and he put this into his lap. But there's other options here too. You could put your palms on your thighs or your knees, your palms up. You could rest your hands comfortably in your lap. You would like your sternum up and your shoulders back, keeping the body erect and straight because it keeps the mind attentive and alert during the meditation. Whereas if you were slouched, the mind would have a tendency to be dull or lethargic. But if you were real rigid, the mind could be overactive or uptight. So you'd like the upper body to be in the middle with the sternum up and the shoulders back. And not only does this keep the mind attentive and alert, but it also helps you to breathe in through the nose and out through the nose. So the seated position is something that you might learn in, and this is like the go-to position. But you're not going to always be able to be in the seated position because this body is constantly changing. There's going to be times where you need other positions. One time I got into a motorbike accident several years ago, and I couldn't actually sit. I couldn't cross my legs. So fortunately, I knew these other positions. So I used lying position in that situation. Where you might also use lying position is that if you notice in the seated position you're having any aches and pains anywhere in the body, you might switch to a lying position, because what you do is you lie on the floor face up. And if you've done any yoga, I think they call this resting pose or corpse pose or shavasana or something like this. This is kind of the way yoga people refer to this, where you lay on your back face up and your arms are out to the side. All the muscles in the body are completely relaxed. So if you're noticing some lower back pain or hip pain or knee pain or something like this, just relax the body by laying flat on the floor. Sometimes people will tell you to breathe through the pain. This is a misunderstanding of what you're actually doing in meditation, because if all the mind is experiencing is pain, 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 you're not going to be able to train it for what it is that you're looking to do. If you understand the life story of the Buddha from yesterday, where he was hanging himself upside down from trees, he was laying on beds of nails, he was piercing his body with metal implements, he was starving himself, and he shared that none of that led to enlightenment. That's causing physical pain to the body. That's a misunderstanding of what the actual goal in meditation is. The goal is to train the mind, not to train the body. So if you're noticing any hip pain or knee pain, this is the body's way of saying, hey, something's wrong here. Can you take an action here? Can you fix this? So what you'd probably like to do is kind of try to adjust in your position during your meditation. And if you can get comfortable in that position, great. But if not, you have the lying position to switch to. And now you can get comfortable in that position. So it's not like you have to strike a pose and stick with it, right? You can actually switch inside your meditation. You can either shift within your current position, or you can even change completely to a different position within one particular meditation session. So lying meditation is really helpful if you notice that the body is having any aches and pains. But with lying position, sometimes you might notice that you have a tendency to fall asleep. This can occur, right? Where you're kind of dozing off and you're falling asleep. So that's where standing position and walking position comes in. that if you just stand up and lightly clasp your wrist in front of you, or have your arms and hands beside you or behind you, this is a nice way to meditate, where you can just stand up. Same thing that you're going to be learning to do with the mind. You do the same thing with the mind. You're just switching your body positioning into a standing position. And it tends to keep the mind more invigorated and more active when you're in the standing position. Some of the other ways that I've used standing position is I've been at like a bus stop before, and I've been waiting for a bus to come. And I knew that, this bus isn't coming for 15, 20 minutes, and there was nowhere to sit down. So I just stood there and did a little bit of meditation. I didn't consider it one of my 2 to 3 meditations, but it was like a little touch up, little 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there. I've even been in places where there's like a long line, maybe like at the Department of Motor Vehicles, and this line only moves once every 10 minutes or 20 minutes, and I'm standing there for a long time. Just close my eyes in the standing position and get a little bit of meditation in. Might as well. There's nothing else going on. So you could use it in those situations too. Walking position, not only is it good if you're noticing that you're falling asleep, but it's also good if you have an overactive mind. If you're noticing that you just have a lot of energy in the mind, and the last thing you're thinking about is being still somewhere and sitting down and being still, walking meditation is really helpful for you. And I'm going to be teaching you that as part of this meditation retreat, where we're going to be doing some walking meditation together. So I'll show you guys how to do this. So you could start with a walking meditation and then move into a seated, lying, or standing. Or say you sit down in meditation and you're noticing within 3 minutes that your mind's too overactive and sitting is not working out for you, you can switch and move to a walking position. So I'm going to show you guys that as part of the meditation retreat. So these are the 4 different positions, and these are the ways that I've used these. But again, you don't believe me, right? You are your own independent practitioner on your own journey to enlightenment. I'm your tour guide and pointing out things for you. So you're going to need to use these and see in what situations do they work best for you. Essentially, what you're doing is like building a tool belt so that you can pull out whatever tool that you need at any given time. So when I got in that motorbike accident and I realized that I couldn't cross my legs, no big deal. I just did meditation in the lying position. I was hooked up to an IV, laying in a hospital bed, and I just did my lying meditation. No big deal. I knew that I had the ability to do that. So if you have these tools, now you can use them whenever you like. And the way to make something a tool is to use it frequently. That when you first started to pick up a hammer, for example, it wasn't a tool yet because you haven't used it enough. But after you've picked this hammer up 10, 15, 20 times, now it's a tool. And if you need to use a hammer, you can easily pick it up and start using it. So even before I had that motorbike accident, I was already familiar with the lying position, the standing position, the walking position. So then at whatever time I needed it, I could just employ it at that particular time. So you would like to use these at different times. First, building up your seated position. That's usually where people start, but then pretty readily you can move into a lying, standing, and walking as well. Okay, so any questions on the meditation basics? Anything you guys would like to ask about? Yes, sir. If you could grab a mic right there. And then, like I mentioned, you guys can keep these mics with you because you'll have maybe more than one question, or someone around you might have a question.
Good morning. Thank you for doing this. I'm very grateful to be here. I'm curious, how does the Vipassana meditation fit into what you just described, and why particularly you didn't quite mention this?
Sure. Is this what you've learned, maybe like body scanning? Is this what you've learned?
Body scanning, yeah, that's exactly what I mean.
So if you look at the original teachings of the Buddha on meditation, you won't find anywhere that he talks about body scanning. It's not something that he ever taught, but I know this is taught all throughout the world, and you see this in a lot of different places. But he did teach something called the 4 foundations of mindfulness, which is something you're going to learn about tomorrow. And you need to develop the 4 foundations of mindfulness in order to get to enlightenment. And what I suspect they're trying to do with Vipassana is they're trying to develop the 4 foundations of mindfulness based on what I know about Vipassana, because it seems like they're trying to build awareness of the bodily sensations. It's not something that you'll find in the Pali Canon and what the Buddha actually taught, even though a lot of people think that it's there. You'll never find anywhere that he mentions Vipassana or body scanning or any of these other things. I never needed to know Vipassana in order to experience what I'm experiencing. The Buddha never taught it either, so that's why I don't teach it. This is what you'll need, is the breathing mindfulness meditation. And from what I understand, in those Vipassana retreats, they usually start out with the breathing mindfulness meditation for a few days, and then they move to the body scanning, and then they go to the loving kindness meditation. So I teach the breathing mindfulness and the loving kindness, and then I teach the meditation to realize non-self and the meditation to eliminate sexual cravings. Here in a moment, I'm going to show you the original words of the Buddha, where he talks about the 4 types of meditation that he taught. And you'll see the 4 that he taught, and it doesn't include Vipassana.
Very interesting. Thank you. I'm just wondering how they, but that's not the question. It's just, I'm just wondering how they came across it, even because if when you go there, Goenka tells you, this is the main meditation of the Buddha, this is what he did. And then now you're mentioning that it's not even fully mentioned in the canon.
Yeah, what you'll see is because the Buddha taught 2,500 years ago, that people either overtly or inadvertently changed his teachings over that 2,500 years. And oftentimes what people are doing is they're just doing whatever their teacher taught them. They haven't necessarily gone back to verify in the original text of what the Buddha said and what he didn't say. So if you've been in this oral tradition and there's 2,500 years of handing it down, it's very easy for an oral tradition to be changed and modified. Whereas if you go back to the original text and you see what did he actually teach, then you'll know for yourself. And you don't believe others, but you don't believe me either, right? You can see for yourself what the Buddha taught. So that's why I'm going to show you in the original words of the Buddha of exactly what he taught. And I have the books over there so you can see it as well, so you don't believe me either. But then you don't even believe the books either. You're like, okay, let me read the book. This is what the Buddha says. Okay, let me do it. Let me see if it works. And then when you do it for a few weeks, you're like, whoa, this really works. Because it's kind of like a potent medicine. If you guys have been dabbling in this area of retreats and Buddhism and awakening to enlightenment, and you maybe have seen some progress, but maybe not real significant, when you start getting the original true teachings of the Buddha in his own words, you're going to see so much progress. I've had some students take retreats like this with me, and they're brand new. They've never learned anything before, and they'll come in on like the second day or the morning of the third day. They've actually studied, 2 days with me, and they say, David, I just got an email this morning that would have normally shaken me up, and I would have been so upset by it. But I read that email, and I completely understood it, and I was able to stay calm. And this is because they're learning the original teachings of the Buddha, and even as short as 2 days, they were able to see progress in the condition of their mind. So it's like getting a really potent medication that now, if you start learning through the original words of the Buddha, you'll see how that really affects you in a positive manner. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're welcome. I have a question here. It's already on. Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering, what tips do you have for meditating?
Our batteries must have went out. Whenever that crackling's going on, the batteries are getting close to being out. The ones in that box are recharged, and then you can just get another mic, and that'll work. If you guys switch out the batteries with the one in the box.
The question was, what tips do you have for meditating in public or a more active area? Usually I meditate in a quiet, private room with maybe just my cat, but some people have children around or are even like out in public spaces where there's movement or things that want their attention in some way. What tips do you have?
Sure. The tip is to expose your mind to that frequently so that it can get comfortable with this impermanence. What you're going to hear when I talk about the Four Noble Truths is that the underlying problem that every unenlightened mind is experiencing is its craving permanence. So if the mind gets used to meditating in a quiet environment where your bedroom and just your cat, when you go out onto the park or you go to a waterfall or something like this, your mind won't be comfortable in that environment because it's craving the permanence of that quiet room that you're used to. So what you would like to do is not allow your mind to get attached to any one particular thing, whether it's in your meditation practice or any other aspect of your life. So once you get your meditation practice started within the first 6 weeks, the first 4 to 6 weeks, you would like to start moving your mind around into different environments so it never gets the opportunity to grab on to that environment, whether it's the lighting, the sound, or whatever it is in that environment. You'd like to move it around into different places. So now it gets exposed to this impermanence and it starts to get comfortable with it. It'll be challenged in those environments because it's not used to that, but eventually it will overcome that challenge and it'll have just as much peacefulness in a busy park or a train station as it is at home in a quiet environment. There's been times where I've been on like a boat, a very large boat with like 300 people, and there's like an engine compartment that rumbles and the boat swaying back and forth, and the people are talking really loud because it's a tourist boat, and you can see somebody on top of the engine compartment trying to meditate. And this is what you do, is you expose your mind to these different challenges and you desensitize it to all of this impermanence that it's experiencing. And that's what's going to help you to get comfortable in that environment, is by exposing it to that environment frequently. Mm-hmm. Yep.
What would be your advice for people who come here with already an existing meditation practice that they have on their own?
Sure. What I would suggest people to do is to understand that if they're not yet enlightened, meaning that they're still experiencing anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, and all these other discontent feelings, that there's certain aspects of their practice that they haven't fully learned yet, and they haven't fully cultivated the wisdom to get to enlightenment. So there's certain things in their, not only their meditation practice, but in their day-to-day life that they're going to need to set aside. They're going to need to let go of, because there's certain things that they're doing and that they haven't learned that isn't the actual truth. And they're going to need to let those things go. And then they're going to need to bring in some new wisdom in order to help them to continue to evolve. Whereas if somebody stays holding on to what they're currently doing, knowing that they're not enlightened, then they're never going to make progress. They're never going to experience improved growth. So if your mind is unenlightened, whatever you're doing now hasn't led to your enlightenment yet. So there's going to be certain things that you need to let go of, and there's certain things that you're going to need to bring in order to cultivate the mind further. So that's something I would suggest for people to keep in mind as you're learning. But when you're learning, now you don't believe me, you don't believe other people. You look at the suttas, you look at the discourses, you learn what the teacher's teaching you, but now you test it out for yourself to independently verify it. And then that's where you'll see the improvement in the growth, because now you're cultivating the wisdom without believing anybody about what somebody's told you to do. And the things that I'm teaching you, these are things that I know with 100% certainty actually work. And that's why I know that I can teach them, because if they worked for me, they will work for you. Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's go on here. I have some more to share with you guys on this topic. This was just getting us started. So here's where the Buddha teaches, or at least introduces students to the 4 types of meditation that he taught. So here's where you can see in his original words the 4 types of meditations that he taught. And these are the only 4 that he ever taught. Before this, he was teaching about something else. He was explaining to his ordained practitioners about 5 different things that they needed to cultivate in order to make their way to enlightenment. And you can see the entire discourse in the book series that I share. But after that, he says, having based himself on these 5 things, meaning the 5 things that he was talking about previously, the monk should develop further another 4 things. Here's the first one. The perception of unattractiveness of the body should be developed to abandon lust. This is the meditation to eliminate sexual cravings. Some people need that, some people don't. Some people can eliminate that without this meditation. It's a specialized meditation that some people need and some people don't. Loving kindness should be developed to abandon ill will. This is loving kindness meditation, to eliminate anger, hatred, and ill will, and all the lesser versions like frustration, agitation, annoyance. By the time you get to enlightenment, you don't even have the slightest dislike towards another being. Right now, you probably have certain people that you like and certain people that you dislike. That dislike is coming from your own mind. You have certain expectations of this person, and you want this person to be a certain way. And if they meet your expectations, you like them. But if they don't meet your expectations, you don't like them. Where if you understand impermanence, which you guys are going to learn about this morning, you can understand that not everybody's going to meet your expectations. And this is okay. You don't have to dislike people just because they're not doing doing what you want them to do. So there can be this ill will, this anger, this frustration, this annoyance, this dislike that arises in the mind due to someone not meeting your expectations. So you can train your mind with loving kindness meditation to essentially rewire the mind so that it no longer experiences this. Then meditation or mindfulness of breathing or breathing mindfulness meditation should be abandoned to cut off thoughts. That's what we just did this morning, where you're focused on the breath, the mind moves off the breath, and you cut that off and let it go, and you bring the mind back to the breath. This is the primary form of meditation that the Buddha taught. And you can see this in his actual own words, that he says, this is the meditation that led to my enlightenment, in addition to these as well. Then he's got this one that says the perception of impermanence should be developed to eradicate the conceit, I am. When one perceives impermanence, the perception of non-self is stabilized. One who perceives non-self eradicates the conceit, I am, which is nibbana, enlightenment, in this very life. So this is a meditation to realize non-self. And I'm going to be teaching you that as part of this retreat. The only one that I'm not teaching in this retreat, but I do teach it in other venues, is the first one. And I have it in the first book, volume 1, chapter 11. Oftentimes I'm teaching this to students on a case-by-case basis. There is one course that I actually teach it, but oftentimes students are coming to me in confidence and saying, hey, I have an addiction to pornography or masturbation, or I have 5 boyfriends or 5 girlfriends, and I need your help to reduce this sexual craving. And then we're kind of talking about this privately, but I do teach it in one particular course. There's no secret about it. It's in volume 1, chapter 11. If you'd like to ever learn it, and if you need it, it's there for you. And then you can just ask me questions about it and I can help you. Or you can learn it through the course that I teach, where I teach it, and it's been recorded many times. But these are the 4 meditations that the Buddha taught. It's the only 4. And the 2 that you need is breathing mindfulness meditation and loving kindness meditation. Everybody's going to need those to get started. And then the other 2 are specialized meditations. So now what I've done is I've listed these so that you can see what are the unwholesome qualities that you're eliminating and what are the wholesome qualities that you're cultivating. Because remember, that's what meditation is. Dedicated, active, purposeful meditation practice where you're eliminating certain unwholesome qualities and cultivating certain wholesome qualities in the positions of seated, lying, standing, and walking. So with breathing mindfulness meditation, you are eliminating the unwholesome quality of craving, desire, attachment. You're going to understand more about what that is after our break this morning. This is the longing, the yearning. This is the chasing after the objects of your affection, forming your inner feelings based on that thing, that now the mind is having this unquenchable thirst. This is the cause of all discontent feelings. It's not just the fact that you're interested to do something in the world or you're pursuing a certain goal or objective. That's not what a craving, desire, attachment is. So I'm going to help you to understand more about what that is when we get to that here after our break. But that's what breathing mindfulness meditation is helping you to do. When you're focused on the breath and your mind's moving off the breath, you're cutting that off and letting it go and bringing the mind back to the breath. You're also cultivating mindfulness and concentration. Again, tomorrow you're going to learn more about mindfulness, the 4 foundations of mindfulness. But right now, you can just think about mindfulness as awareness of mind. If you're going to purify the mind, which is what enlightenment is where you're purifying the mind of the pollutions of mind, you're going to need to have awareness of what's going on in your own mind. So when you're focused on the breath and your mind moves off the breath, you're aware of that the mind has done that. That's building your mindfulness or your awareness of mind. And then focusing on the breath, you're developing your concentration. Okay. So I'm going to talk about these others when we get to them in our retreat. But now I would like to share with you kind of starting and conducting your meditation session and how you would start off. So it's important to help you understand that the mind is the boss, the body is the employee. Okay. What I mean by this is the ultimate goal is to train the mind, and the body is the employee. But in order to get to the boss, you need to go through the employee, right? So if the employee is luxurious, it's not going to take you to go see the boss. But if the body is painful, it's also not going to take you to go see the boss. So you'd like the employee to be comfortable. And that's why anytime you experience any pain, you would like to switch positions because you would like the employee to be comfortable, so it'll take you to go see the boss. The mind is the boss, the body is the employee, but you've got to go through the employee in order to get to the boss. You can't just go right to the boss. The Buddha, when he talks about meditation, if you look at his words and he talks about his guidance in meditation, he typically will say, set up mindfulness in front of you before you start meditating. What he's talking about here is to develop awareness of mind before you start meditating, because that's what mindfulness is awareness of mind. So rather than just plop down into meditation and start meditating, he teaches you to build some awareness of mind. So for some people, that might be go use the bathroom, empty the organs, maybe do a little bit of stretching or something like that. That might be what you try to do to kind of gradually ease the mind into meditation. For me, what I do is the chanting. That helps to ease the mind into meditation, building some awareness of mind as you ease into the meditation. So that is setting up mindfulness before you meditate, is bringing some awareness of the mind as you ease into meditation, that you're not just plopping down in the meditation, because that'll take you 5, 10, 15 minutes before you actually start getting benefit. Whereas if prior to meditation, for a few moments, you're kind of building this awareness of mind, you actually get more benefit out of the meditation itself. In terms of your time, frequency, and schedule for meditation, there's no specific time that is going to be any better for meditation than others. So if you've ever heard, like, you have to meditate at 3:30 a.m. every morning, there's nothing happening at 3:30 a.m. that's going to make your meditation any better or any worse, right? And if somebody's like, you got to meditate at exactly this time every day, they haven't understood the very first beginning teaching of the Buddha, which is the universal truth of impermanence. This is the constant change in the world. You're not going to be able to meditate at 9 a.m. every morning. It's physically impossible because things are going to happen. Things are going to be changing in your life. There's been times where I've been meditating and I've been maybe 3 or 4 minutes into my meditation and my son walks in and says, "Dad, I need you to take me to school." And I'm like, "Oh yeah? I thought your mom was taking you to school today." He said, "Yeah, me too, but she's gone. I need you to take me to school." I was like, "All right, well, I'll take you to school," right? So I got up, took him to school, and came back, and I started meditating. So if my mind was craving to meditate at exactly the same time every day, I would have been frustrated. I would have been agitated that I couldn't meditate at this exact time. So your meditation is going to change. The Buddha meditated 3 times a day: morning, midday, and evening. And if anybody ever teaches you to meditate at exactly the same time, well, this individual, Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha, he didn't meditate at exactly the same time every day. And you know how I know that? Because watches weren't even invented 2,500 years ago. It was impossible for him to meditate at exactly the same time every day. And he still got to enlightenment, so you can too. So it says very clearly in his teachings that he meditated morning, midday, and evening. These are like anchor points 3 times a day. And what I encourage you to do is have these anchor points. And maybe morning and midday is what you would like to, or morning and evening is maybe what you would like to do. And where you can get a midday meditation in, right? So if you have an anchor point of somewhere in your morning, somewhere in your evening, you're going to be meditating. And then where you can kind of get a midday meditation in. This is accomplishable for a household practitioner to be able to do. But if you're going to meditate in the evening, it's important that you do it before your mind gets sleepy or tired, right? So if you normally go to sleep at 10 p.m. in the evening, probably somewhere around 9:15, you'd like to be meditating. But that doesn't mean you can't meditate at 6 p.m. or 7 p.m. because you surely can. It's just somewhere in the evening you'd like to be meditating. So there isn't a fixed amount of, or there's not a fixed time that you would like to meditate every single day, because it's not possible for you to do this. But you would like to gradually build up to about 30 minutes per session. That should be all you actually need. Using that gym analogy that I talked about, you don't need to go in the gym and roam around and watch TV and talk to your friends and be text messaging and talking on the phone. You don't need to do that. You just go into the gym, do your work, and get out, because that's essentially what meditation is you're exercising the mind. So you would like to get in, do your meditation, and then get out and go do what it is that you would like to do in your day. So it might take you 6 months, a year, even 2 years fingers to build up to a frequency of 2 to 3 times a day for 30 minutes or more. It might take you that amount of time. So you're not in a race with anybody. You're not in a competition with anybody. It's your practice. So just gradually build up your practice to 2 or 3 sessions for 30 minutes or more. And that's all you should actually need in your meditation practice. And that's going to keep your mind training and going to the gym and flexing it and essentially building it to be more disciplined and more strong. In terms of your timing of your meditation, sometimes people use alarms for their meditation. I don't suggest you do this. When possible, don't use an alarm. The reason why is because you'll be in meditation and you'll be thinking, is it time yet? Is it time yet? Is it time yet? This is like the mind craving, right? And you're trying to get rid of that craving. So if you don't need an alarm, don't use an alarm. Or the other thing you'll happen is you'll have set your alarm and you'll be deep in meditation, getting all kinds of benefits. Oh man, I shouldn't have set my alarm. So maybe like in the evenings or on the weekends, you don't need to set an alarm. Then don't set an alarm. But the way that you check to see how long you've been meditating is before you start meditating, look at your time. Okay, 9 a.m. Now you meditate and meditate for whatever amount of time you think is best. And then when you're done, look at your time again. Now it's maybe 9:15. Okay, you meditated for 15 minutes. So you know next time, try to expand that a little bit. Right? So about once a week, check in on your meditation to see how long you're actually been meditating for. I still do this even today. I will check it about once a week just to make sure, because there's some times where 5 minutes of meditation can seem like an hour, or sometimes an hour can seem like 5 minutes. So you like to kind of check in on your time every once in a while and just be sure that you're meditating for about 30 minutes. That's what you would like to be able to get to. And when you build up to that level of frequency and duration of 2 to 3 times a day for 30 minutes or more, you'll notice real improvements and real benefits here. Now, for some of you, that might sound like a whole lot, 2 to 3 times a day for 30 minutes or more. But remember, there's probably unbeneficial things that you're doing right now that you could kind of clear out of your life. If you're spending 3 hours a day on social media or watching YouTube videos or something like that, you could probably scale that back to maybe 30 minutes or an hour, right? And now, boom, you just got 2 hours back in your day to be able to spend time doing something that's more beneficial for you, like meditation. So there's going to be certain things that you're going to need to strip out of your life. And that's why it takes 6 months, a year, even 2 years to gradually build up your practice to this. But so you don't have to put pressure on yourself to snap your fingers and get to this level of practice right away, but just be gradually working towards that over a 6 month, 1 year, 2 year time frame. You might notice sleepiness during your meditation where you're dozing off and falling asleep. You kind of have 2 options here. I already gave you one of them, which is just to change your position. Change from a seated or lying position, if you're falling asleep there, to like a standing or a walking position. That's one option for you. The other option, just get some sleep. One of the things you might notice is that when you start meditating, it's kind of like a dry sponge. The mind is kind of finally getting what it always has needed all these years, which is this training. And as you do so, you might notice that the mind has a tendency to fall asleep, either during meditation or even in your day. For about 3 to 6 months, I was very sleepy, maybe even a little bit longer, because I wasn't sleeping very good for a long time. So I kept falling asleep and I kept having all these difficulties sleeping. So there were some times where I would sit down to meditate. I would start dozing off after about 3 to 5 minutes, and I would just lay down and get a nap. I would take a nap for 20, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, and then I would just wake up and start meditating again, right? So you can do that too. So if you're noticing that you're sleepy, you can either change your position or you can just take a nap and then wake up and actually meditate then. So there's kind of like this little hump that you need to get over. And it's about a 6-month hump where you might notice that your mind is working really hard. There might be even some exhaustion in your mind because the mind's now starting to exercise in this way. And once you get over that, you'll notice that you don't have any sleepiness any longer because you're going to be getting better quality sleep now after you start meditating. So then you'll notice that you don't need to have those naps maybe as frequently in certain parts of your life. So now I don't fall asleep in meditation because I'm getting the sleep that I need. It's very good quality sleep, but there was a period of time there where I needed to really pay attention to this. So you might find that to be the case too. You might notice physical sensations during your meditation. What I mean by this is like maybe like itching on the body as you're meditating. You might notice this. And if you notice this, what I suggest you do is try to ignore it and just focus on the breath and just keep your mind focused on the breath. But after about 5 or 8 seconds, you might just be like, I just need to itch. So just go ahead and itch and scratch that itch, right? But now try to expand it a bit longer. So next time, make it 10 seconds or 12 seconds. Then next time, make it, 15 or 20 seconds. Eventually, you can get to the point where it doesn't affect your mind. You'll see that the itch arises, it changes, and then it fades away because it is impermanent. So if you can practice in that way, you'll notice that your mind will be more disciplined. You might even notice at different times when you're meditating, I used to have some flies that would come in and crawl around on my head. They would even come down on my nose. I even had some go on my ears and in my nose sometimes. And I think of them as little assistants, right? They're trying to see like how committed is this person to meditation? Can they really stay focused and meditate in this way? So what you choose to do in that situation is up to you. But what I chose to do is just try to focus on the breath and just let them do whatever they're going to do and train my mind to not be bothered by that fly running around on top of my head or on my nose or something like that. So these are like little assistants that might assist you sometime. So this can help you to build your concentration, because in terms of like meditating in a park or something like that, that'll be a piece of cake if you're at home and there's a fly running around on your head. Whereas if you're constantly swatting it, it's the mind being uncomfortable and trying to change this situation, right? So you can use those things to help you. You might notice visual stimulation during your meditation. This is like you might see colors like green or yellow or purple or white. You might have different images coming through your mind. And if these things are happening, you're not a special person. Sometimes people will call me. They'll say, hey, does this mean I'm special? I saw green. Does that mean I'm going to get rich? What does that mean? Or one time somebody was like, I saw purple. Does that mean my boyfriend's going to come back to me? Like, what does that mean? It doesn't mean any of that stuff, okay? I'll explain to you guys what's going on here. The brain is one thing. That's the physical organ in the body. And then there's the mind. The mind is this non-physical thing, right? These are two different things. There's a connection between the two of them, but they're two completely separate things. You're training your mind, this non-physical thing, but it has an effect to the brain. All your sight is happening inside your brain. So even with your eyes closed, that's why you can see. You can still see because the sight is happening in your brain. The eyeball itself is just the lens that's bringing in the light. When your eyes are closed, you can actually still see because it's happening inside the brain. So when you're training your mind and you're cleaning up the mind, it has an effect on the brain. The physical structures of the brain are actually changing. Doctors and researchers are showing us this through MRIs and CAT scans and things like this that didn't exist during the lifetime of the Buddha. They can now measure that stuff and they can see that these changes are taking effect. So there's physical structures of the brain are actually changing, and this is what's producing those colors and the images. You might even hear this as you're meditating. You might actually hear the brain physically changing. I know I did. It sounds like you can hear it, right? I used to walk around with a lot of pressure in my skull. I used to get headaches, migraine headaches and things like this, to the point where 3 to 5 times a week, I was having all kinds of significant headaches, even to the point of vomiting sometimes. This was long in the past when I was working in America, in the USA. But after training my mind in this way, all the pressure is gone. I don't have that pressure in the skull anymore. I don't get migraine headaches anymore. I don't have the vomiting anymore. All of that stuff is completely eliminated through training the mind. But it has an effect on the brain. So this is what's happening with the visual stimulation. So you don't have to reach out to somebody and be like, what does the white mean? What does the green mean? What does the yellow mean? It's just the brain changing. And it's an indication that things are going well for you. But these things are impermanent. Once the brain creates all these physical changes, you'll eventually get to the point where all of that is transpired and you won't experience this any longer. It's not a bad thing. It's actually really beneficial for you as these changes are occurring, but they are impermanent. Once all those changes have been made, the brain doesn't go back to the way that it was before. So you get up to a certain point in your practice and the brain doesn't change back to the way that it was before. And doctors are showing us this through MRIs and CAT scans as well. Sometimes people have been taught to meditate with external stimulus. What I mean by this is like meditation beads or candles or music or phone apps or things like this. If you've been meditating this way, it's up to you whether you choose to do that stuff or not. But what I would encourage you to do is strip all that stuff out of your practice, because the mind can get attached to this. And now you're 3 days into a hike in the mountains of Chiang Mai, and you're like, wow, I'd really like to meditate here. This campsite's really nice. Oh, I don't have my special candle with me. I can't meditate. Or my phone app doesn't work out here in the middle of the woods. I can't meditate, right? So you would like to strip away all that stuff so that you can meditate anywhere at any time, right? So that when you're walking through the park and you're like, this is a nice park, I'd like to sit down and meditate. You can, right? So you really only need 3 things to meditate. And you're going to have these 3 things with you for the rest of this life. All you need is the body, the mind, and the breath. These are the only 3 things that you need to meditate. The body, the mind, and the breath. And if you can train to be able to meditate with only those 3 things, that means you can meditate anywhere, anytime. So when I got into that motorbike accident, I called my wife and I said, hey, I'm in the hospital. You need to take care of things at home. I don't know how long I'm going to be here for. She was like, do you need me to bring you anything? And I was like, no, I got everything I need. I've got the food. I've got the bed. I've got the IV. I've got the body, the mind, the breath. I've got everything. You don't need to bring me anything. I've got clothes. I've got everything I need. So just go home and take care of what you need to take care of, right? So if you meditate in this way, just the body, the mind, and the breath, you'll meditate anywhere, anytime. It doesn't matter where you are. You can always meditate. So what you might need to do if you're meditating with music or beads or candles or things like this, it doesn't mean you can't use these things. Maybe occasionally you use these kinds of things, but 80 to 90% of the time, you'd like it to be just the body, the mind, and the breath. But right now, if you're meditating with any of these things, the way you can strip them out of your practice is gradually. Because when you make some real abrupt changes to your life, the mind doesn't tend to like this. It likes to usually have things done slowly. So let's just say I was meditating with music regularly. What you would like to do is maybe do 1 session with it and 1 session without it. 1 session with it, 1 session without it. And you might do that for like a week or so. Then eventually when your mind gets comfortable with that, then you do 1 session with it, 2 or 3 without it. 1 session with it, 2 or 3 without it. And you do this now for a week or so. And then when your mind gets acclimated to that and is comfortable with that, you do 1 session with it, maybe 4, 5, 6 without it. And now you do that. And eventually you'll get to the point where you're like, I don't need that music anymore, because your mind's gradually moved away from it. You do these little small incremental steps where the mind doesn't even realize what you're actually doing, but you're introducing it in a way that your mind can appreciate that it doesn't have this real abrupt change. Okay. So this is the meditation basics and kind of like starting and conducting your meditation session. Okay. Do you guys have any questions on starting and conducting a meditation session? No? Okay. So you have a question? Yeah, go ahead. I see some more questions. You need a mic? Yeah. We can pass them back. Go ahead. Yeah, sure. Either way.
Yeah. I was just wondering if, since the breath is so much connected to the mind and our thoughts and our breathing patterns kind of influence how our brain behaves, I'm thinking are there any breathing practices taught by the Buddha apart from the mindfulness meditation?
He doesn't teach any breathing techniques, but what I can share with you is a nice, gradual, steady breath is what's going to produce the most benefit. Whereas if you have a really quick, rapid breath and your mind's fixed to that, your mind's going to tend to be overactive. And my mind was like that for a while, but when I slowed down the breath, then your mind being fixated on that, it'll slow down the mind, because that's one of the problems in the mind is it's going so fast. It's going so rapidly. It's like decision, and it's making unwise decisions in the world. And now it's experiencing these unwholesome results. So by slowing the mind down, you'll be able to think through any particular situation that you're in and make wise decisions. So if you slow down the breath, you'll be able to fixate your mind to that, and it'll slow the mind down so that you can make more consistent and wise decisions. One of the things that the Buddha talks about with the breath is he talks about it like this post and this pillar. And if you think about in meditation, your breath is the post or the pillar, and then there's these 6 animals that are tied to this post, and they're kind of pulling in all these different opposite directions. This is like your mind's craving, your desire, your attachments, your mind's longing, yearning. Well, if those animals were tied to this post and pillar and they just kept pulling and pulling and pulling and pulling, eventually those wild animals will figure out that they can't go anywhere, and they're going to sit down calmly by that post and that pillar. They're going to figure that out. And your mind is the same way, that your breath is the post or the pillar that the mind is anchored to. And as it's pulling in all these different opposite directions, you keep pulling it back and pulling it back and pulling it back. Eventually, your mind's going to sit down and be calm by that post or pillar. And it's not going to be just one meditation that it's going to accomplish that, but over the series of multiple meditations, you're going to notice this about the mind, that it will pull and pull and pull and pull. But then when you keep bringing it back, it will eventually sit down by that post or pillar. It'll sit down by the breath, and it'll just be calm. So you'd like your breath to be nice and steady, nice and calm, nice and consistent. So when I say develop a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath, that's what I'm describing, is you need to develop this. There was times where I needed to not even be meditating, and I just needed to sit and actually work on my breath without doing the meditation. So sometimes what I do is I breathe into this mic and help you guys hear the pace that I'm breathing, because it's really steady. It's really slow. So let me just breathe into this mic so you guys can hear it. Okay, so this is the way that I'm breathing. Okay. So it's a really steady, consistent breath, but I had to develop that. And there's a little bit of a gap between the inhale and the exhale, and you can focus the mind on that. And that actually helped me to eliminate some of the fear of death, because when I wasn't breathing, I thought, oh my goodness, I'm going to die. And I had to train my mind like, no, you can not breathe and you'll still be alive. It's okay. So your length of your breath is going to be different for each person. So the volume of the amount of air that you take is going to be different for each person. But the rate at which you breathe can be nice and slow and steady like this. And if you work on this, this will help to slow your mind down. Okay.
You mentioned meditating without an alarm. What signal do you use to stop? And do you find yourself counting or estimating the time if you don't have that device?
Yeah, you would like to get all that aside so that your mind's not doing that. So if you're on your way to work and you only have 20 minutes to meditate, use an alarm. Go ahead and do that, because showing up to work late, you would probably have some unwholesome karma as part of that. But on the evenings and the weekends, you could probably meditate without an alarm. And that's where you just look at your time before you start meditating, and then you meditate and you look at it afterwards. And now you can see like, oh, that was 15 minutes. And now next time you just need to expand that for longer. And you'll kind of get more of a general sense of how long you've been meditating when you start getting used to doing it in this way.
What do you...
It's just the batteries, yeah. Mm-hmm.
What do you use? What do you use to know when you've done enough meditation? Because I feel that you can kind of keep going. Oh, I've got distracted, bring it back. And
yeah. So I don't use any timer or anything like this, just internally. I just kind of generally know, because I've timed myself so many times that I just know kind of generally what is a 30-minute time frame. In the past, I used to do it until I started noticing pain in my hips. And then that tended to be around the 20, 25, 30-minute mark. And then I just started expanding that a little bit because I wasn't interested in meditating with pain. So then I would switch positions sometimes. But you'll develop this internal sense of time that you'll know how long it's been over time. Yeah, you're welcome. Yes, sir. We have some other mics here. It feels like these need to have a battery change. Yeah. You have to press it, and then it comes. The lights will come on.
Hello?
There you go.
I'm wondering about folks who might have like upper respiratory issues or congestion, even from a common cold, or even some trauma associated with focusing on their breath.
Yeah, so if you're having, like, say, sinus issues, like I used to have sinus infections, and from there, I actually trained my mind to be able to breathe through the mouth and also meditate, because breathing in through the nose is impermanent. You're not going to be able to permanently breathe through the nose. So I needed to train my mind to be able to meditate through the lips as well, or breathing through the mouth. And I would focus on the sensation of the air moving over the lip. Right. So this is something that you can work on and train. And I even did this before because I knew that I had a potential to have sinus infections, because this is something I typically get. So I was training to do that even before I got to that point where the sinus infection was there. When the mind has what we describe as trauma, all this is the mind is clinging to a past experience. It's holding on, and now it's forming feelings in the present moment based on a situation that's occurred in the past. You can train your mind to eliminate that. Trauma isn't permanent. It can be eradicated from the mind, where the mind no longer forms its inner feelings based on an experience that happened in the past. So if somebody's having any issues where they're breathing and it brings up certain feelings or thoughts, this can all be eradicated from the mind. You're going to see after our break, when I talk about the Four Noble Truths, you're going to understand how all this connects. So one of the things I'll share before I move into the very last thing on this topic is the way that breathing mindfulness meditation works is you're focused on the breath. And anytime your mind moves off the breath, you're cutting that off, letting it go, and bringing the mind back to the breath. The goal of this meditation is not to eliminate your thoughts. Sometimes people think that the goal is to eliminate your thoughts based on the guidance of cutting off your thoughts and bringing the mind back to the breath. You're going to have thoughts. Even when your mind is enlightened, you will have thoughts during your meditation. The difference is that an unenlightened being, when they're meditating, they will typically have a bombardment of thoughts. So if you had like thought, this is normal. Or you might have had a thought, you indulged in that thought, you followed it for a period of time, and then after 2 or 3 minutes, you're like, oh yeah, I'm meditating. Let me bring my mind back to the breath, right? This is very, very common. So if you're experiencing that, no worries. That's just where the mind is now. What you're making your way towards is what an enlightened being experiences is when they have a thought in meditation, they know that they've had a thought, they're aware of it right away, and they cut it off and let it go. And then there's this long period of time where their mind is quieted and stilled. And now for maybe 30 seconds, a minute, 2 minutes, their mind is quieted and stilled. And now they have another thought, but they notice it right away and they cut it off and let it go, and they bring their mind back to the breath. So even an enlightened being will have thoughts during meditation, but the goal is to notice your thoughts sooner and sooner and cut them off easier and easier, bringing your mind back to your breath. So that's the ultimate goal of this meditation in terms of the functions and the techniques of it. The accomplishment that you're accomplishing is you're eliminating craving, desire, attachment, and you're cultivating the mindfulness or awareness of mind and the concentration. That's what you're actually working towards. So if you're noticing that you have a bombardment of thoughts or you're indulging in a thought, this is normal. Just get to the point where you're noticing your thoughts sooner and sooner, and you're cutting them off and letting them go easier and easier. And then just some last words from the Buddha, is from where I started from. He shares, meditate, monks, do not be complacent, lest you'll regret it later. This is my instruction to you, right? So meditate, students, do not be complacent, or you'll regret it later. What he means by regretting it later is that when you're annoyed and you're frustrated or you're angry, you'll regret it later. One time my son came to me and he said, Dad, I can't sleep. I can't sleep. I said, oh yeah, what's the problem? He said, they played a scary movie at school today and I just can't get it out of my mind. They were, had ghosts and, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, oh, really? I'm surprised they showed that at school. He was like only in 3rd grade or something. And I said, oh, I'm surprised they showed it in school. I said, have you been meditating so that you can cut that off and let it go? He's like, no, I haven't been. I was like, just like the Buddha said, you're going to regret it later, right? So he was regretting having not meditated because he couldn't fall asleep that night. It was like 11 o'clock, 12, 1 a.m., 2 a.m. He couldn't fall asleep, right? So you're going to regret it when you're not meditating, because if you meditate and you can cut things off, you're going to see more and more. You're going to be able to sleep like a baby. It's so nice, right? So training your mind, you'll be able to get to the point where it's very well disciplined and it's very well controlled. So that's why the Buddha is saying you'll regret having not meditated when you're angry and you're frustrated and you're irritated. What I would share in this is never give up. Never give up on your meditation practice. I went one time 3 years without meditating. This was before I really got on the path to enlightenment in a firm way. That was probably the worst 3 years of my life, having not meditated for that period of time. But eventually I got back into it, right? So if you give up on your meditation practice, what you're essentially saying is, I'm going to be angry for the rest of my life. I'm going to feel guilty and shameful for the rest of my life. I'm just going to be stressed and having anxiety the rest of my life, right? You're just kind of giving up on that interest to be able to get to the point where you no longer experience these conditioned feelings. So I would encourage you to never, ever give up. You might go through periods of time where you're not meditating as frequently, but then you're going to need to get right back into it, right? So your enlightenment isn't going to be determined on whether you miss meditation today or not, right? It's not going to be determined because of that. It's going to be determined based on, can you consistently put together multiple years of meditation to the point where you're dedicated and committed to your meditation practice. So if you did 2 meditations a day in a month, that would be about 60 meditations. But if you get 52 or 53 meditations in per month, you're going to make your way to meditation or to enlightenment, right? So it's not about like if you missed meditation today, everything's off, right? There's no way I can get to meditation because I missed meditation today. It's no, you missed meditation today, so what do you do next? Do you allow that to become 1 week, 1 month, 1 year that you're not meditating? Or if it's like, oh my goodness, I missed meditation today. Let me get right back on that and let me be committed to this. So if you can consistently string together multiple days and weeks and months of meditation, that's what's going to determine whether you get to enlightenment or not whether you missed meditation today. So you're going to go through periods of time where, you're going to miss meditation, and this is completely normal. But just be sure that you get dedicated to it and you just consistently continue to move forward. Don't become complacent and never give up on your meditation. Okay? All right, so now it's 10:45. We're going to take our mid-morning break, and when we come back, I'm going to be sharing with you what is enlightenment and the Four Noble Truths, which is the very beginning teaching of the Buddha. But before we go to break, I'd like to check in with you guys about who would like to go on the excursion today. If nobody's going, that's fine. We don't need to go, but I would like to check in because if you guys are going to go, I need to organize transportation for you. Today's excursion is planned to go to the Sungkapang Hot Springs, which is kind of like an outdoor spa where we can sit around and soak our feet in hot water, and they have a pool that has hot water in it. They have soaking tubs where there's like group soaks and stuff like this, little bungalows and things like this. They even have food and a restaurant out there as well. It's about 45 minutes outside the city, and we would end up taking a van, which would be about probably somewhere between 250 to 350 baht per person. And then once you get to the Sungkapang Hot Springs, I think they charge about $100 or not $100, 100 baht of entrance fee. It's a national park. If you live in Thailand and you have a driver's license, they usually give you a discount. If you're a senior, I think you even get in for free. So you can use your Thai driver's license to be able to get in. So these are options for you. And then we'll end up getting back here, right around 6 o'clock so that we can start class at 6:30. So can I see a show of hands? How many people would like to go on this? And I'll just count. So we've got one. Actually, you guys count so I don't miss anybody. Andy, can you count? $12. Okay, so I'm 13, and then Rachel's going, so that's 14. Okay, so we have 14. So I'll get probably we're going to need 2 vans to go. So I'll organize 2 vans, and they'll be here to pick us up. I'll share with you guys when we get to the lunch break what we're going to do, because they're probably going to pick us up around 1:30, and that'll give you guys time to get some lunch before we actually get into the vans and head out there. But I'll talk about that when we get to lunch. So right now is basically about 10 minutes to 11. Let's take a 20-minute break, which will give us until 10 minutes after 11, and then I'll pick it up there with our class. So thank you for your questions, and thank you for your interest to learn. I'll see you guys in about 20 minutes, okay?